These two people, a psychologist and a promoter. Promoter is a man who has lived the treatment process and wants to be trained to support groups of men. Women psychologists may be part of the team. I'm going to explain each of the program components. Crisis intervention, telephone line support for men. Psychologists can handle calls. This program is included in the national system of 911. Also belongs to WEN since 12 years. There are 1,000 calls per year. Individual brief psychotherapy required. The group psychotherapy and reeducation of masculinity. There has two components, psychotherapy, 45 sessions. In the sessions, men talk about life experiences, violence, childhood, love life. They recognize emotion, thoughts, behaviors. They recognize their responsibility about their violence. And then skill training, at least 4 courses, 16 sessions plus, training in anger management, jealousy, loss, and separation, training skills for effective communications, assertiveness, and expression of emotions. In psychotherapy group, men talks in group therapy. The man speaks in the first person, talks about his current problem, talks about his violent behavior, recalls childhood experiences, listening to other men, because men don't know, listen, recognize and express emotions, express their needs and desires with respect, recognize his own responsibility. He is responsible for the consequence of his actions, participate in experiential exercise. This is very important for us because we work with Gestalt therapy and psychodrama. Develop the capacity for empathy toward others, develops the capacity of self-awareness, and learn to repair. I hope that during 45 sessions, the man can learn these tasks. Methods, particularities. Open groups, number of participants per group, 20 to 100. Each participant has a record. First 3 minutes, an initial ritual, rules, introduction, motivational talk. Then the group is divided into several groups for 2 hours. Progress reports are made to the judicial system. Group therapy session with men in rural area. There's a picture. The group is a safe space for decoding hegemonic masculinity. It is very important. It's a safe space. In San Jose, main town, arrive more than 100 men per session. Sometimes arrive 120, 130. An environment of empathy, respect, confidentiality. They can speak freely, uncensored. It's very important that the man find out for himself the moral masculinity that he learned. Models, influences, humanistic psychotherapy, Rogers focusing Gestalt, psychodrama, approach and body expression, creative integration of other psychological schools. Therapist's role, emphatic listening, reflects facts and feelings, relate violent behavior with hegemonic and power models of masculinity, and propose experiential and body exercise. Therapy suggests body expression and movement exercise. For example, exercise walking in the park. Exercise thinking together. The man who suffers receives support group. Movement facilitates emotional contact. Emotional contact is very important in our method. What do you feel? How do you feel it? When do you feel? Relaxation and meditation facilitates emotional contact. They make contact with their needs to self-knowledge. Exercise outdoors with boys. Therapists propose experiential exercise from Gestalt therapy and psychodramatic techniques. Corporal expression is very important. Corporal expression of man who shuts himself. Men shut ourselves and don't speak and don't talk with anything, with any person. Body contact, touching, hugs, embrace, is not forced. It's very important. It's not forced. It emerges spontaneously. Psychodrama with puppets and masks. Role playing, for example, affective communication with the partner. Sculptures. Sculpture is very important. In all the sessions, we use sculptures. Psychodrama. And the visual decoding technique. The therapists ask the men, what is the image of man is shown in the drawings? I use 10 or more drawings. For example, what is the shadow man? And man talks. Oh, what is the model of man? What happens with this man? We have 200 of drawings. And 45 sessions, it isn't enough for men. Some men stayed at program 90 sessions, 100 sessions, or more. The third component is community participation in violence prevention activities. Men organize violence prevention activities in their communities. They involve in campaigns such as White Ribbon and Affective Fatherhood. Some of them build community networks of men to prevent violence and promote positive masculinities. They train other men from the community. They involve in campaigns, public demonstrations. They organize space to share with their children. Some results unchanged. High-profile violence decreased by more than 75% of cases. Men learn to manage anger and jealousy. Acquire skills to communicate emotions. Lower levels of homophobia and sexism. They involve in domestic role. Learn to care for themselves. Improve affective fatherhood. Men's family recognize changes. Wrap out 30%. Physical violence decreased, but symbolic violence and neomachismo is more difficult. It requires more time and other process. The way is from the logic of male domination toward the logic of care essential. Care essential. Leonardo Boff says care essential. A man with care himself, care to the others, care the planet, care the earth, care the animals, care the nature, care the women. This is the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The timing was perfect. I now invite Vrinda Grover. Vrinda is a lawyer, a researcher, a human rights and women's rights activist based here in New Delhi.
Thank you and good morning to everyone. Many of you know, those who are from India and others may have heard, that in December 2012, there was an incident of gang rape in Delhi, following which there were protests and the issue of sexual violence against women became central to public debate, public discussion. Soon after which the government appointed a committee headed by a former Chief Justice of India, which is called the Justice Verma Committee. And the Justice Verma Committee was asked to deliberate and see what could be the legal, particularly through the criminal justice system, what could be the possible answers to create both prevention as well as protection and punishment. I will be talking a little bit about the issues that the Justice Verma Committee report spoke about and linking it to what is happening today and what I think is really the unfinished agenda which needs to be taken forward. I would, however, like to emphasize here that the report of the Justice Verma Committee, as well as what we saw in the visible and very strong protest that followed the incident, actually were in many ways what had been happening in the country much more quietly for 30, if not more years, where the women's movement, the feminist movement had been working around these issues, whether as scholars in colleges or as researchers, as lawyers, as activists, as people who are dealing with women who are at the receiving end of all forms of violence, including sexual violence. And a lot of the understandings and the insights of the Verma Committee build upon the work of the feminist movement in India. One very important paradigm shift that the Justice Verma Committee report makes is that it relocated rape and sexual violence as a crime, rather than being something that the victim is contributing to in any way, or is responsible for, or inviting. This was an important shift here because the discourse otherwise, both within the legal system, through judgments and outside, tended to blame the victim and hold her responsible, and therefore create greater restrictions and curtailment around the lives of women. The Verma Committee located as in feminist discourse that it was patriarchy, it was the absence of equality, and the rampant discrimination against women, which were the root causes of the violence that we are seeing against women, particularly sexual violence. This, to my mind, does 2-3 things simultaneously. Not only does it create a discourse that is different, and allows you to pin the blame where it is deserved, but also placed the obligation upon the state and created a responsibility for the state. Under the Indian Constitution, ensuring equality and non-discrimination for all citizens, including women, is a responsibility of the state, which helps you move out of the individual issue that it is this individual man and the individual woman who are the actors and the recipients of the crime, to the larger issue that we need to reckon with, in my view. Women, through the years and in post-2012, it has been very visible. You can actually see it in the data that is getting reported from the National Crime Record Bureau now. The entire circle of silence, stigma, and shame was to a very large extent broken. And we today see many, many more women reporting crimes of sexual violence, which to my mind is an important step forward. What now remains to be seen is that will the justice system, will the legal system be accessible and sensitive to the concerns that the women are voicing? There, I think we still have a lot of work to do. We see here in a lot of the studies that intimate partner violence is what is being underlined as the most rampant and widespread. Interestingly, when the amendments took place to the criminal law, on suggestions of the Verma Committee, followed by the women's groups demanding amendments in the criminal law, the definition of rape was enlarged for the first time to move away from the peno-vaginal patriarchal understanding of what is violation to a bodily integrity and dignity of woman perspective. However, the one exception that continues to haunt the Indian Penal Code, which actually all data, both within India and globally, runs counter to, is that marital rape continues to be uncodified as a crime. In fact, the Penal Code makes a specific exception to even forced sexual intercourse or any other form of sexual assault by the husband of his wife if the wife is above 15 years of age. Although all the data shows that it is intimate partner violence that is most routine and rampant, which clearly shows that there is evidence to codify marital rape as a crime in India, and so something that we need to take forward. One of the other issues, and I'm just going to flag some of the issues that came up. One of the other issues that was pointed out was that why does impunity for this crime persist? Not only because there is social sanction for it, not only because it is culturally seen as part of their entitlement and part of their fun. And here I may mention that the day this legislation amending the law was being passed in Parliament, it was actually leaders of political party who said we are passing it not because we agree with the changes in law, we are passing it because the youth and the women of this country are demanding it, as far as many of the very senior male political leaders of this country were concerned. They thought voyeurism and stalking was part of the fun that their generation of men had enjoyed, and it should certainly be handed over as a legacy to other men, which shows that it's not necessarily the political leadership that knows where the way forward really is. The other aspect on impunity was that institutions don't take the issue of sexual violence seriously, and they don't act when a woman complains. And this is true from the police station right up to the courtroom. And therefore, to counter that kind of institutionalized impunity, penal provisions seeking accountability have been introduced. Interestingly, those penal provisions were flaunted by the Government of India and the NHRC in the recent CEDAW committee in July 2014 in Geneva while presenting the India report, that we have very stringent provisions against police officers who will not take action in cases of rape, etc. However, if you look at what is happening on the ground in India, that particular penal provision has yet to be invoked in a single case against a police officer who does not work according to the law in a case of sexual violence. So clearly some things are for an audience abroad and not necessarily for women here. The other aspect that was highlighted was the institutional bias that the legal system suffers from. And this institutional bias is against many constituencies in India, but particularly against women of all classes, and comes very much, and this has been established through sting operations, and very recently in a right to information application given to police officers in Uttar Pradesh, they disclosed that yes, they think women are responsible, their clothes are responsible, very clearly showing what is going to be the result when you complain and you go to them for any kind of assistance. This morning's newspaper, however, brings good news. And clearly the picture is far more, the picture is changing, and we are beginning to see shades of gray. This morning's newspaper tells us that there is a judgment by a trial court, presided over by a woman judge, where she has held that the gang rape of a woman of African origin, who says in her evidence that she was a prostitute earlier, would not in any way impact the fact that this particular incident was an incident of gang rape, and although the accused did try and take some benefit from the fact and try to influence the court's mind by saying she was a prostitute and she is only making these false claims, the court has totally rejected it and said her past will not in any way. And I think the women's movement and the human rights movement can take credit for judges beginning to think differently. It just means we should continue doing what we are doing. The past, so here there is a conviction on gang rape. The law has for very long, in fact since 2003, said that the previous sexual experience or the past history or the character of the woman will have no place in a rape trial. Unfortunately, the conduct, the character of the victim haunts rape trials, and courts are quick to come to the rescue when it's a pure victim. Here we are seeing a change, and we hope we can build upon this change. Let me move quickly to another aspect that I think deserves some serious attention. What is the role of the state in all this? We are talking a lot about individual characters, individual masculinities, or shaping of masculinities on class, location, etc. How does violence against women, sexual violence against women, increase due to state policies, global policies, and what is the role model that the state sets up here? First, I want us to, I simply want to flag the issue that when we are looking at issues of vulnerability of women, and even in the last report brought out by ICRW, the issue of economic stress has been underscored as aggravating vulnerability of women to violence. What are the state economic policies and what are the global economic policies doing? The large-scale displacement, the large-scale dispossession, the very rampant increase of unemployment. We know that women are at the receiving end of unemployment, or even in India, to take a specific illustration, the closure of the National Rural Employment Guarantee Program proposed by this government against in many of the districts, and we know that women have been the largest beneficiaries of that program. What is this going to do to the vulnerability of women to sexual violence? And here we need to therefore look at the systemic structural issues to hold into account governments whose policies are impacting on women, international act players, whether it is the WTO or it is the IMF or it is our own national government, all of whom proclaim that they stand for women's rights, for women's safety and security. Women's safety and security is not going to be achieved through CCTV cameras or street lights alone. Those are issues that can be acted upon. If the fundamentals of policies are going to change, women are going to be rendered extremely vulnerable. And I think that those are areas we need to pay adequate attention to. Another aspect that was brought out again in the Verma committee report was the aspect of coercive circumstances, where you're not dealing just with one perpetrator against a woman, you're dealing with circumstances such as a fiduciary relationship, or a person in a position of authority, or a woman in a women's home or a children's home, or you're looking at areas of conflict where the army or other security forces are there, or situations which are specific to South Asia and India, where there is communal conflict or caste conflict. Sexual violence perpetrated here does not still get adequate attention. We do not see the state, we do not see political leaders as focusing on getting justice in these situations, and this impacts both the community as well as the woman. And I also feel we need to know very clearly that if there is a case of mass sexual violence which does not even get investigated because the allegations are against personnel of the Indian Army, then it would be our huge mistake to think that impunity is going to stop at certain borders and will not spill over into the rest of the country, and we need to raise our voices there too. The last point that I want to make here is about what is the state model, and when loud cries for punishment are made, whether it is in the form of death penalty or to penalize and hold responsible juveniles in the adult criminal system and basically dump them in the adult prison system, rather than allow them an opportunity to be reformed and rehabilitated through the juvenile justice system. We know those homes are not functioning properly, but maybe that's where we need to divert our attention to. The loud cry in which we get a lot of male supporters for death penalty is clearly both an externalization of the problem of violence against women, as well as allowing the state to take no responsibility. The death sentence is something the state has absolutely no problems in according to any number of people, knowing very well that the legal system will in itself sift and allow some to escape, and only a certain kind of perpetrator will reach the news in our country. And my last point is the role model of a militaristic, armed, macho state. The role model set by political leaders who themselves advocate militaristic policies is at the heart and needs to be linked to how this individual masculinity gets formed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rinda. Before going to the debate, I just want to sum up some of the main ideas that our speakers brought here today. I think the three presentations dialogued really well between themselves. So first, Rachel talked and brought the issue of the importance of doing accurate research in order to identify risk groups. And in the case of